taken the first steps forwards, trying to develop this multi-stakeholder coalition that aims basically to promote the patient access to novel cellular therapies manufactured from cells and tissues of hematopoietic origin, and to contribute to health and well-being through innovation by multi-stakeholder collaboration on clinical data, standards of care, education, and policy. EHA is the other co-founder of this coalition that basically represents this really strong cooperation with different stakeholders coming from different backgrounds. Next slide. The Go-Kart Coalition has different working packages, which are basically focused on scientific, regulatory issues, and educational activities. Just want to mention that the next fourth European CAR T-cell meeting is going to take place in Nice in February next year, hopefully face-to-face. I really don't know what's going to happen at this point, but it has been really a successful meeting that has been able to join together people from different backgrounds, of course, with educational objectives, but also as a starting point of new relationship. Next slide. EBMT, as I have mentioned before, is also very much committed to education and to provide high quality, accessible education to all members of the healthcare community focused in stem cell transplantation and cellular therapy. We developed in 2019 the e-learning unit that it was considered a way to increase the educational reach of EBMT. And after almost 2 years of virtual events, we are trying little by little to get back to a new normality. And I just would like to invite you, and I will be saying that at the end of my presentation, to come to the first hybrid next annual meeting that will be happening in March next year in Prague. And for the educational activities and the rest of the EBMT life, we are applying equality, diversity, and inclusion values, which is one of our major objectives and will be one of my major objectives for the strategic plan of EBMT for the next 4 years. Next slide. So here you have a summary of our educational objectives. The learning platform, I have already mentioned the annual meeting, which is the biggest event, and some mid-size and small educational events that have a fixed calendar over the year. Next slide. And finally, of course, last but not the least, the engagement of patients and families, patients advocacy groups. And that was basically the objective of the development of the patient engagement task force that was developed several years ago. And it's also a multidisciplinary team of clinicians, researchers, other healthcare professionals, patients, caregivers, donors, and other stakeholders involved in transplantation and cellular therapy. Next slide. So I don't think that I am the most appropriate person here to talk about Harmony. You know much better about the development of Harmony than myself. But if you go to the next slide, which for me is very important to mention, is that in this red circle that I put in this slide that probably is outdated, and nowadays Harmony and Harmony Plus has more partners than the one that are presented here. EBMT was invited to participate from the first step to be an official partner of Harmony, together with the rest of them. Next slide. So I think that I can also skip for the sake of time and give a little bit more time to the Q&As. So the reason for Harmony, so harmonization of outcome measures, the increasing use of omic data, and of course the need for speeding up drug development, which is of course a very important issue for all of us nowadays. Next one. So I have borrowed these slides from Guillermo Sanz, So which are the main reasons for improving collaboration between Harmony, Harmony Plus, and EBMT? The reality is that EBMT has been an official partner of Harmony from the very beginning, but unfortunately, I would say that at least for the time being, our collaboration has not been strong enough, and this is one thing that we need to work in the future. So basically the main reason is that there is a clear synergy between both of us, between both organizations, that we have the same major aim to improve the outcomes of patients with hematological malignancies, maybe from different point of views. And of course, data sharing is the key of this success. Next slide. So what Harmony Plus can offer to EBMT, of course, Harmony Plus nowadays is, I would say, the biggest database in terms of patients with hematological malignancies. EBMT can propose and lead projects using the Harmony data. And of course, EBMT, let's say, being the European Transplant Registry, will be acknowledged, and let's put it this way, reimbursed for the effort in harmonizing and curing data to be included in the Harmony's big data platform. And of course, let's say, Harmony can offer EBMT big data and artificial intelligence tools for establishing new patterns of associations between data and outcomes. Next slide. So what about the EBMT offering to Harmony Plus? So I think that what we can offer is basically being the European registry for patients being treated with stem cell transplantation and cellular therapy for different hematological malignant and non-malignant diseases at the European levels, the possibility for other Harmony's partners to use the EBMT data for specific research projects. And of course, EBMT has a long-standing history of knowledge in terms of statistical and informatic analysis from the transplantation point of view that, of course, could be very useful for Harmony partners. Next slide. So basically, when EBMT was invited to be a partner of Harmony, we were initially involved in the working packages that had to do basically with handling data and registry. But then it became very clear that EBMT had a pivotal role in working package 2 with all hematological malignancies. And if you move to the next slide, please. So I have just put here, as a matter of comparison, the disease-oriented working parties of the EBMT and the different disease-specific areas that Harmony has, basically to point out and to emphasize really the connection that we have between both organizations. Next slide. So basically, I think that it's very clear why Harmony and EBMT need to collaborate and which will be the benefits for both organizations. So we have, let's say, probably more accurate transplant outcome and data, or data coming from a bigger population of patients. Probably disease characteristics and prior therapy might be better outlined, let's say, in the big data that Harmony is collecting or is already having. Next slide. So basically, and that's basically a summary as is the next slide. So Harmony and EBMT could be perfectly collaborating basically to produce data-driven science to increase treatment efficacy, decreasing adverse events, prolonging survival, and contributing to patients' quality of life. Next slide. And if you can go to the next one. So basically, I think that in conclusion, we need to strengthen our collaboration between EBMT and Harmony. We have already reviewed clear common objectives that we have between both of us. We have complementary data that can be used to allow and to develop more solid analysis, and of course to develop specific working groups with specific fields of interest. Next slide. So just another invitation to all of us to come to our next annual meeting in Prague, March next year, which in principle will be hybrid, and hopefully we can have another joint session between EBMT and Harmony there. And that next slide. So basically, thank you very much for your attention, and I think that now we have some time for questions and comments. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Anna. I think it is really, we have room to collaborate, absolutely. And we'll move to the next presentation and we'll do the discussion of both projects together, because I think there are two, let's say, important projects here.
Sorry to interrupt. In this case, we take the questions now for Anna.
Okay. Whatever you
We
want.
first have the question for Anna and then Nigel Hughes, and then we have the questions for him. We don't bundle them.
Okay.
Yes?
Okay.
No, sorry.
Okay, it's okay, it's okay. Okay, question to, maybe there are some questions coming from the chat, and maybe there are some questions in the room. And, okay, Rudiger.
That was quite an impressive overview, and 740,000 data sets, that's what Harmony can only dream of. But I wonder, how many of these data sets do you think would be qualified for inclusion in the Harmony trial?
First of all, thank you very much for the question. So this is one thing that we have to look at, because it's very clear that the numbers are absolutely impressive. As I have mentioned, but this has been really very brief in my presentation. So the obligation for full members of EBMT is to report MET-A data. And MET-A data do not represent a huge amount of data or 100% comprehensive data from transplantation. The vast majority of the specific data related to transplant are MET-B data that are not being 100% filled in by all the centers. So this is one thing that we will have to look at it. You are absolutely right. The numbers are impressive, but probably not this 100% of the patients would qualify to be included in Harmony. Although I need to understand, what do you mean qualify? So we need to define this term qualification here.
No, it's a matter to I think until now we are working by projects, and I think it will be really interesting to include some subset of patients from EBMT to our projects in order to increase not only the number, but also the type of the analytics that we can perform with both databases together.
I fully agree. Let's say, I think, I mean, we can discuss everything, but probably the most important thing, or I think that the best thing from a scientific point of view, and this is more reachable than, let's say, moving 80,000 patients from one place to the other one, is to work in terms of project and to see inclusion and exclusion criteria, let's say, from the project. And of course, if many patients receive a stem cell transplantation at some point of the disease course, so this is one thing that could be envisioned this way. And as you have said, Jesus, it's not only a way of increasing numbers. Maybe it's not increasing numbers the most important thing, but probably add additional information that Harmony may lack, and different ways of producing the statistical analysis. I think that this is more realistic and probably most important from the scientific point of view and the scientific productivity.
Yeah, also in the interest of patients, that this is also important. We have Elizabeth and Guillermo. So please, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. Anna, I was one of the reasons for coming, apart from hosting the Harmony meeting at EHA, one of the things I was looking forward to was to meeting you in person. And I just wanted I just wanted to commiserate you, because it's quite a difficult exercise as president of EBMT to give the talk you've just given without having spent yesterday listening to everything that's going on. So well done doing it at a distance. One possibility might be that you think about having a Harmony session in your March 2022 meeting if the program isn't already completely tied up, because as you said, you don't just fit into one disease, you fit into several diseases, so it does need a slightly different management. And it would probably be something that would help you to move on to think about the right kind of involvement for EBMT if you did decide to have a joint session in your meeting in Prague. So anyway, I'm sorry not to have met you, but I'm sure we will meet at some point in the near future.
Absolutely, and I agree. I think that, in fact, let's say a clear difference, let's say, between how the working groups or the disease-oriented working groups are working in harmony, and stem cell transplantation is that transplant is a transversal strategy, and it's going to fit probably in all the diseases that you are looking at harmony. And transplantation, first of all, it's a moving target in the treatment pathway of a given patient. And it's fitting in every single disease. So probably it will have to be seen in a different way.
Guillermo.
Well, first, thank you very much, Anna, for being here and accept our invitation and give us this excellent outlook about the EBMT and the potential ways of collaboration. My question for you is, do you think that we could start the inclusion of EBMT patients data in Harmony in quarter 2-3 of 2022 after agreeing on a specific research projects for the different hematological malignancies that could come from the joint EBMT Harmony working groups that you are proposing in your talk?
Guillermo, thank you very much. Hope you are doing well. And I think that this is the way to go. This is what you know perfectly that we tried to do some months ago. Unfortunately, COVID has not helped us in any way. And probably COVID has basically been more harmful in projects that were basically starting to be developed. And I think that this is the way to go. Probably joint projects being agreed by, let's say, what we can call the working parties of the EBMT and the different disease-oriented groups that you have in Harmony. I think that this is the best way to collaborate.
No, I definitively agree with these different points raised here. I think it is really a room to do this collaboration. We have EBMT president here, we have EHA president here, and I think it will be really important to continue the presence of or the discussion of the Harmony projects in the different EBMT and the next EHA Congress in Prague and Vienna, respectively. So what the way with I'm just asking, maybe not a question, is totally open question, is how we can, so we have to establish some kind of really focused collaboration in which we can do something concrete in some specific area in which we can work together and we can get this advance for a patients. Could be AML, could be ALL, could be MDS. We are not focused in aplastic anemia or, let's say, the other diseases in which you are focused, but maybe it will be a matter to discuss, maybe in a, let's say, in a much more concrete or focused meeting, the way or the disease in which we can have a common goal. They are all the diseases, but we have to find, I think this pilot, this proof of concept are always the best way to demonstrate ourselves that this is a real collaboration between the different projects.
So I agree. I was just thinking while you were talking, because let's say we did an attempt just before the COVID pandemics, but this is what I'm going to do from my side is that I will bring to the next board meeting that will be in January. In principle, it's going to be a face-to-face board meeting in Prague. The relationship between Harmony and EBMT. And my suggestion would be to pick up, let's say, a big partner for stem cell transplantation in terms of disease, which of course in principle is acute leukemia, which is the most frequent indication for allogeneic stem cell transplantation, maybe as a potential proof of principle that the relationship between Harmony and EBMT is something that it's a reality. It's not only several slides presentation or whatever. So, I mean, I take the compromise right now to bring this project to the next board meeting and to try to find out one specific disease that can serve as a pilot. I would say that acute leukemias or, I don't know, eventually chronic malignancies. This is a big working party in EBMT, which is a kind of a mixture of different diseases. Maybe acute leukemias might be a more concrete disease to start on.
Thank you. We have a couple of more questions on the chat. Solen, please go ahead.
Hi, Anna. Nice to see you. I was wondering about the transplant rate in each country, and especially on the number of CAR-T-treated patients registered in the EBMT registry. This is very informative and interesting. Would you also be able to share this data per disease? So for example, in our case, we would be really interested in seeing what is the data for myeloma.
So the only, thank you very much, and nice to see you again, even virtually. So the only diseases that are included, well, you have seen that most of the patients are commercial CAR-Ts. So the only two diseases that are included here are the only two diseases where CAR-T cells are approved. So basically aggressive B-cell lymphomas and acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I have the numbers, and I would say that these numbers are public, and they are not a surprise. So we have more than 2,000 patients included in the registry because of aggressive B-cell lymphoma, basically diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, which is the major indication for CAR-T nowadays. And then we have around 250 or something like that, between 250 to 300 patients being treated with CAR-T because of B-cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I don't have the data for this small proportion of patients that have been registered for investigational CAR-T cell constructs, and probably there will be different diseases, but most of the information there comes from the two commercial indications that we have nowadays. So for multiple myeloma, there is still nothing yet because we don't have any construct still approved, but there will be coming soon when we have commercial construct available for all of us.
Jesus, there's one last minute. Okay, yeah. From Kimo Porca, that's the last one.
Kimo?
Porca from...
Yeah. Kimo, hello. Please go ahead. Kimo, we cannot hear you.
I will read out loud. Has EBMT considered harmonizing its registry to a common data model, or MOP? Would make data sharing much easier and also enable federation for joint projects?
Well, I think that this is a good question. We are moving our registry to a different platform that probably is going to be easier to be used and would also modernize the way that data are being collected from a transplant point of view. I am afraid that probably it could be at this stage quite difficult to, let's say, to harmonize the data or to have the same platform with other registries. This is one thing that I have always been thinking, that if we would have lived in an ideal world, this should have been the case, but unfortunately, registries don't talk to each other too much. Even, for instance, the way that the transplant registries and cellular therapy registries have been constructed are quite different. So we can share data, but the platforms are absolutely different, for instance, between CIBMTR and EBMT. So I don't think that would be, let's say, a realistic option.